welcome to another episode of Salmon's Pizzeria. Tonight I'm joined by Alex and Thomas to discuss all things Scottish football after this weekend's results. How are we doing tonight, gents?
I'm doing wonderful. I don't know about Alex.
I'm still drying out from Saturday night from standing on the uncovered terrace in the away end at Pataudry, and the long train journey home where I felt like a wet dog. So I think I've just avoided hypothermia. So I'll take that.
Hopefully, fingers crossed, then you end up to dry off by the rest of the show tonight. But speaking of the away end at Pataudry, quite an interesting game for the Aberdeen Dundee United game. It did seem as though Jim Goodwin went for the more defensive approach, setting up quite similar to how a lot of teams would have against likes of Celtic or Rangers at the respective stadiums. What do you think that says about the threat then that Aberdeen have posed this season, Alex?
I think kind of twofold. I think it's that United have still got a lot of players injured. So um, Louis Moult, who was in the away end, I saw him in the pie queue, which was very odd, and a bit of a kind of surreal moment. So he's out, obviously big talisman up front, but also Craig Sibbald, Docherty as well, and actually Ross Graham, who I think's probably been United's best player this season. All four of them are out, and suddenly that's the spine of a team. So I think United were kind of forced into sitting back. Especially second half when Aberdeen started making the changes. I mean, they took off Topi Keskinen and brought on Shadon Morris, and I think that really flipped the game, and it kind of forced United to sit back a bit too much for my liking. And it felt like, especially after Jack Walton made that save, it did feel like it was a case of when rather than not if Aberdeen were going to get the winning goal. But I think part of it is to do with Aberdeen having their tails up. It was a great opportunity for them. Full crowd under the lights at Tawdry, chance to go 3 points clear at the top before Celtic obviously played later. I think it was one of those games where I was like all week I was kind of dreading it, which is quite a rare thing for me. Unless you're playing Celtic or Rangers away, I quite rarely dread a game against Aberdeen. But I was all week, so I was quite worried that they were going to really have their tails up. And unfortunately, I was kind of right.
It definitely was quite an interesting game, especially with such a late on goal. It did end up being nothing each for quite some time. What were your thoughts on the game then, Thomas? Do you kind of agree with Alex that maybe Dundee United should have changed tactics a little bit, or do you think they handle things well considering the injuries and things like that going on in the background?
I didn't expect Dundee United to sit back as much, but I did forget ask Jim Goodwin. So, but yeah, I after that first half, I was quite nervous because it felt like that one of those games where no matter how hard Aberdeen try, they'll concede. It felt like that. I'm still very pessimistic. Like even though all this Jimmy Talleen era and all these good times, I'm still pessimistic at heart. I still think something bad's going to happen. But yeah, I was really impressed with how we were patient. That seems to be a theme with Aberdeen this season. They're patient, they probe, and they ask questions. And Dundee United were answering all those questions correctly until the very end. And I agree with Morris, who last season was probably a bit of a scapegoat. Probably, well, let's just say we all remember his performance against Motherwell. So he changed the
Low
game.
blow, Thomas, low blow.
Yeah, no, I was more like Morris was hooked after half an hour, and this season Tilling's given players their chance, and it's revitalized the entire team. So yeah, I the more the game was going on, I was like, surely we'll score, and thankfully we did. And I'm really pleased for Peter Ambrose getting a goal as well because he deserves one.
Oh, definitely. It was quite a good game to kind of watch as a neutral. Seeing the highlights of that later on this evening. That is another big win on the cards because that's something like what is it not like 13 or 14 games now in a row without
It's
dropping
13. It's
all
13 out of
points.
14. Yeah, I
Would you guys?
14 out of 15, 1 for 2.
Well, I think that says it all then for Aberdeen. Then, what do you guys think are the most important things to take from this game overall? Then,
I think I think from Aberdeen it goes to show that they can grind out wins, which I think is important if you're going to challenge for a title. It wasn't the sexiest game of football I think you'll ever see. It wasn't that like the Hearts game a few weeks ago, which was which was sort of going every which way. It was a game where they, like Thomas says, needed to be patient the whole 90 minutes, and very thinking pays testament to Emmy Tyland's Scandinavian style. I think it's that kind of patient, methodical. I know it's a bit cliche to say that about how Scandinavian managers are, but I think there's a sense of truth in that cliche because I think Aberdeen teams or any sort of Scottish team that's outside of Celtic and Rangers would historically have just started panicking, lobbing high balls into the box, sticking on four strikers, trying to put everyone up when it was the system was working. It was always going to need just a deflection or a bad bit of defending, and Aberdeen would get in behind and get their chance. I think for United, it's kind of a bit more of a settle back to reality of where we actually are. Fourth in the league at this stage and two defeats, a 1-0 to Rangers, which is increasingly looking like a bad result, and 1-0 away to Pataudry it's not a terrible start. I mean, to be fair, it's nothing short of excellent, especially with the game against Motherwell on Wednesday night, which will probably be a bit more of a litmus test. I hate using the word test. I feel like Tom English when I say it, but it's one of these it's one of these starts where I think the longer this run goes, the more legitimately United, especially with Hibs and Hearts doing poorly, more legitimately United fans think, oh, actually, maybe we could be top six. Oh, maybe we could actually nick into Europe, which is something that if you said in July after a 2-0 defeat away to Falkirk in League Cup, everyone would have laughed at you. So I think it kind of goes to show that no one's calling for Goodwin's head after a defeat at Pataudry. It shows that United are actually in quite a good place, and I think there's probably a bit more of a drop back to reality after the highs of last Saturday.
I
Yeah, I
think
agree with Alex what you said about grinding out results because there have been some of these games where they've not been pretty, especially when we were away to Dundee recently. Second half, poor. We were quite poor, even though we were 2-1 up, and we grinded and we defended. And recently, I think everyone's talking about the attacking play, but I feel like defensively we've improved a lot, especially Rubezic, who was a bit of a bomb scare last season, but Gavin Malloy next to him seems to be a bit of a sweeper event, just absolute behemoth of a man, just attacking everything. So yeah, very articulate, I would say. And I did expect a good game from Dundee United, and they did provide a good game.
Yeah, I think as well. I think it goes to show United didn't have an entire shot on target in the whole game, and that was just by Aberdeen being able to defend really well. I think the only real clear cut chance United produced in the whole game was right at the end when Will Ferry decided to sky it onto Merkland Road. Um, I'm pretty sure that ended up in one of the pubs I used to drink in when I lived up there. I think
Yeah,
probably in the Red Line somewhere. And you're just thinking, it's the American cliche, isn't it? Offense wins games, defense wins championships. But it's true because realistically, if you're not conceding in games, if you don't concede in games, you're not going to lose the game. You're going to pick up minimum a draw, aren't you? So it shows that Aberdeen have the defence that can go the distance. And remember, this is Aberdeen without missing Papagay, who's supposed to be the best player, or has been the best player so far this season. So it's very well poised for Wednesday night. Let's just say.
when you were saying about pubs and Louis and you meeting Louis Mult in the pie queue, you'll never guess who I saw in the Batavri bar. Louis
It's
Mult.
It's quite funny. I felt like I was doing a pub crawl of Union Street and King Street on my way to the game on Saturday. It was very much a hark back to the student days. Very enjoyable, and good to see half the pubs haven't changed in the last 5 years, which is quite nice.
Not a lot about Aberdeen's changed in the last decade, but
No.
hopefully things will improve.
no, definitely. Here's hoping for you both, especially because I know how passionate you are about the teams. Going kind of off that to something I'm unfortunately passionate about is obviously the Celtic Willow game. It was on there at Fir Park. I'm not going to mention the scoreline just because it still hurts. But did you guys catch any of the game at all? Any of the highlights or anything like that?
I catched most of a game whilst, to be honest, slightly hungover after. But I was really impressed with Motherwell for first until they conceded inevitably. That seems to be Celtic have shown a little bit of they can be you can be you can attack them, but if you don't take your chances against Celtic, they'll take theirs. Especially Lennon Miller. I know everyone keeps going on about Lennon Miller, but there's a reason why people go on about Lennon Miller hitting the post twice. His set piece delivery again was absolutely brilliant. And yeah, Celtic just were Celtic in the end.
Yeah, I think I didn't catch too much of the game. I caught the highlights. I was having a lovely Sunday in Costco in Glasgow, which let me just say, what an absolutely brilliant place
Forgotten
that
how much
is.
of a lovely place Costco is. I need to
As
find one in Edinburgh.
Yeah, it's the only thing I would say is that on a Sunday in Glasgow, that is like just the busiest place in the world. But did catch highlights. I was impressed again with Ryan Miller. I think we've gone on about everyone's gone on about him again. Like Thomas says, it's for a good reason. I mean, it's for someone so young, you'd think he was 24, 25 with the way he is such an anchor in that team, and young young minutes in the Premiership or minutes from young Scottish players in the Premiership are at a premium nowadays, and so it's really good to see a young player doing really well, and he'll go for big money when he does go. Sorry, Jenna.
I'll happily take the money for him as long as you get a good fee. They can have him.
Well, I'm sure it'll be more than whatever Eric Barnack valued
Oh, it
Motherwell
will
at as
be.
an entire club. So it's one of these things where I think you're looking at, obviously as a fans of Scottish clubs, and even nowadays Celtic and Rangers, when you include in this, when you get a young player that is of a certain standard, they're not going to be there for long, and it's just about enjoying them whilst he's there. Obviously, I've seen it myself with like Ryan Gold, who is still doing the good stuff up in Vancouver, but have to get that in. The you know, what you say with Celtic, I think even a slightly vulnerable Celtic, which I think they are at the minute. I think they're really rattled from what happened. Um, what happened at Celtic Park last week, and you could see it. I mean, in the spells, especially when Miller hit the woodwork twice. You think if it goes 1-0 Motherwell, then do Celtic have the belief to come back? And especially, I still not don't particularly rate Brendan Rodgers as a manager. I know what makes me controversial. I think there's a stubbornness to him that isn't always the best quality for a manager of the Old Firm. I think it works most of the time, but when it doesn't work, you saw in Dortmund, it can spectacularly blow up in his face, and it did in his first spell as well a couple of times. But you know, I think like we say with Celtic, they've got better players than everyone else in the league. They are a better team than everyone else in the league. They take chances better than anyone else. So it is unfortunately for the other 11 teams, it's about trying to do something special to stop them. Aberdeen have done it, so it's proven that it is possible. But the annoying thing for Aberdeen is, I think realistically, if you're wanting to win a title, it's the sort of game you're really hoping that Celtic drop 2 points in, or drop all three in, which for Celtic keeps them top of the league, and it's one more week where they don't have to worry about dropping behind anyone.
Yeah, it's quite a hard one. I mean, personally, just because the way I see it is you should never lie down at Old Firm. Doesn't matter what one you're playing, doesn't matter what form they're in, doesn't matter if it's before they play a European game, doesn't matter to me personally if it's after they play a European game. You have to give them everything that you've got. However, this game couldn't have come at a worse point in our season since we've got the semi final against Rangers at the weekend. What I would have loved to have seen is, and this is probably a controversial take, but I kind of said this on Twitter and didn't get any angry reactions, so maybe not so much, but I personally, if I was Kettlewell, I would have rested a lot of the starting 11 players, to be honest, or had them on to like halfway through the game and kind of swept and swapped that way, just because obviously a certain red card incident involving Liam Gordon means he might potentially not be able to play on Saturday. And there's rumours the club might try and dispute the card. Time of recording, we don't know if they have or not, but it's one of those ones. It's with where it is in the season, I'm trying to watch carefully how I word this. It should have been treated as a glorified training session with a crowd, if I'm being honest. I wish we'd approached it that way. I mean, again, don't get me wrong, I'd never advocate for us to lie down to them or not try against Celtic. But again, it could have happened at a worse point. As soon as I realised that's how the fixtures fell, was that the Celtic game was at home, and then obviously Rangers at Ibrox. My gut instinct was just that game's a write off. I don't even care. I mean, if we get a result, obviously that's a completely different story. But I was like, I don't care if they beat us. I don't care by how much. It's all about making sure we get no injuries, no daft suspensions. Look how that ended up, and just trying to make sure we show fight and promise, but protect the players. Because at the end of the day, that semi final is going to be much more important for our season than a daft game against Celtic at Fir Park. And I'd love to have seen us get a win, as you were saying. Like, first 20 minutes we were really strongly, and Miller did really shine. But again, as you said, if you don't capitalise your chance against Celtic, they'll run riot over you, and that's how it ended up. I mean, 4-0. Any other time it's I want to take, but at the moment I just don't care because the semi final is all that I'm thinking about. It's all I've been thinking about for the past 2 weeks. That is more likely to define our season than that game will. It probably sounds a bit pessimistic, and that's why I'm trying to watch how I'm on this, but just coming from a fan perspective, I don't care that we drop points at all. That game next Sunday is everything because those are the rare ones. Even if we were playing Aberdeen or United, I suppose we did play us to get there, but you know what I mean? Like, regardless of who the competition would have been next week, that has got to be the focus. And with the way Rangers are now, which we'll probably end up touching on later on in the show, is if we don't throw everything at them, then there's something wrong. Games against Celtic now, it's a write off. Okay, I expect them fully to beat us either be home or away at least 3 goals. If they don't, it's a bad day for them. It's not a good day for us. It's just they've played absolutely horrendously 9 times out of 10. But that game is everything, and if we don't properly show Rangers what we're worth, especially at a time when they are quite weak and vulnerable, much more than Celtic was after the Aberdeen game, and obviously a certain game that happened in Germany, this is going to mean everything to us. It's just that frustrating that Gordon did that tackle in like the dying minutes of the game. Some angles of it, it looks as though it should be yellow, and other angles see it looks as if it should be a red. I'm on the fence about it. I don't know if you guys have seen
It,
the incident or what you guys' thoughts are.
it's a red. It's a
I,
red.
I agree. It's a red. I agree.
I saw it and I was like, no, this is a red. It's just you can't. Especially, it's a silly thing to do in 96
Yeah.
minutes. The game's gone. Um, you know
Utter
why?
head, utter head loss.
Yeah, why do it? I mean, if it's 1-0 and you do it, it's fine. Or if it's
Yeah.
if it's the game's finally poised, or if you're chasing the equaliser or something, fine. We can understand it. But it's a total head loss. What I would say though, and I think the best way Motherwell can prepare for this game is by playing their under-19s on Wednesday night at Tannadice.
Uh-huh.
That's what I'm really hoping
I
for.
wanted them to do that in the Celtic game, never mind against Dundee United, to be
But,
honest.
but
But
well, I'd hope to extend our advantage over Motherwell and the rest of the league on Wednesday
advantage
night.
is
So
absolutely nothing. But no, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
no, I think it's quite. We'll get on to Rangers in a minute, but this semi-finals reminding me, and this probably music to your ears, Jenna. It's reminding me of the semi-final Lee Moult scored
Yep.
against Rangers. I think it's a very similar vibe. I think Rangers were in a similar point where they'd dropped points the week before, or I can't quite remember what the details were, but they were struggling. They were behind Celtic in the league, and there was it was question marks over the manager. And then they lost 2-0 at Hampden to a Motherwell side that had been playing quite well. And I've got a feeling that it could go a similar way on Sunday. I think it's actually for a rarity, given that it's the two old firm in both semi-finals matches. Really looking forward to this weekend's semi-finals. I think they're both 50-50, but not quite 50-50, but they could both go either way. And Motherwell at the minute, you do feel that they're one of the teams who could get a result against Rangers, or shouldn't be scared of playing them at the minute. Albeit, I could completely change my opinion on Wednesday night if they pumped Aberdeen 4-0.
I was just about to say, I think if Rangers get a good result against Aberdeen on Wednesday, they'll be up for that because beating beating a rival, well, depending on how they view it, beating a rival on Wednesday who's in best best run in one of our best runs in club history, beat them on Wednesday, they'll be thinking, why not get to Hampden, beat Motherwell, get in the final. Hope they would hope it's Celtic. So yeah, I think that's semi final for Motherwell Rangers. I think it will be totally depending on the result. I think Rangers would be a bit amped up if they win at Pittodrie, but that's debatable.
It
It's
depends
kind
on
of
it depends on which Rangers shows up on Thursday night. Is it
yeah.
European Rangers that show up, or is it
Or it's a domestic
domestic
Rangers.
Rangers, which are
Yeah,
very different teams this season? Yeah, it's one of these ones that I think it's going to be very interesting. I think I'm sure we've spoken way too much about Rangers and Aberdeen for a Motherwell Celtic game, but yeah,
yeah.
To be fair, it's quite hard not to go down that path just because the semis are next weekend. It's kind of goes hand in hand at the moment. You can't kind of discuss what the weekend games meant as well as the ones that are due to happen on Wednesday without kind of falling in that trap of, oh, what's the bigger picture? I mean, kind of touching on obviously the result against St Mirren, and then European Rangers have been slowly getting better. League form Rangers are questionable now. There has been a lot of angry Rangers fans on Twitter calling for
You always get
Clement to
angry
stay.
Rangers fans, though. No
Well,
matter what
that's
happens, you
true.
always get angry Rangers fans.
they were angry when they went on invincible and angry when they made a European final. So there is a certain level of
There were still
the
some
pop.
who wanted Van Bronckhorst sacked, even though they got in the Europa League final. Like, I don't take Rangers' anger seriously.
Well, that's was going to be my next question for yourselves. Is that now, to be fair, depending on how obviously the result against Aberdeen goes, it might be one of your more funnier nights if you have to do the podcast after it, Thomas. But if, and a big if here because we're all talking hypotheticals, if Rangers don't get their job done against Aberdeen and they lose, where do you guys think that realistic that puts Clement? Does he have to be let go, or do you think he's got at the very minimum to the semi even? Since you could always make the argument, Aberdeen are high flying, they seem to be quite close for the title race at the moment compared to little old Motherwell. We've kind of been up and down with the results lately. Do you see him being potentially in danger if results don't go his way on Wednesday, or do you think at the very minimum he's got at least the semi and then take it from there with the rest of the European games?
He's
I
got to
think,
win. He's got to win one of them. He has to win
yeah,
one of them. Probably. I think the issue is Rangers can't afford to sack him. I don't think
Yeah,
Rangers should. I don't think Rangers should sack him because I don't really think that much of it is his fault. I think
what
it's
Rangers Football Club need is stability, because
and they just
everything
don't have
happening in
it.
that back room is just chaos. If they sack a manager who, well, to go for the usual tactic here, do they have the money to sack him? But
That's the most controversial take on this podcast. This is
yeah,
admission.
I'm kidding, obviously, but yeah, like they can't afford to sack him, in my opinion. Not the pun, no pun intended. But but yeah, I think they need stability, and I think they've shown, like when Clement first came in, he's not a mug, in my opinion. So yeah, I think they shouldn't sack him.
if you look at them now, you look at the signings they're making, the signings they made in the summer. They spent money, yeah, but they didn't spend the same money Celtic spent, which is at the end of the day, Rangers fans don't really care about their 10 clubs unless they're suddenly 5 points behind Aberdeen. Um, but they care about Celtic, and Celtic really just care about Rangers. And until and in comparing them both, which is the best barometer to do, the guys Celtic brought in, Engels, Kuhn, Ida, who I still don't know how he cost £10 million. That still baffles me.
If
Um,
Norwich knew he was the only one they wanted,
it's
surely.
more that they would spend £10 million on someone like Adam Ida, who I think he's a goal scorer, and I think he is important, but it does feel very much like they were held over a barrel there for that one. That was a bit odd all round, but if you got the money, I mean, it's English clubs do it all the time and spend silly money on players, so whatever. But in Rangers, the guys they've brought in, Czerny, um, who is it's just not the same. It's not the same caliber of player. I was even forgetting who else they brought in for a second, but Hamza Igna.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
He's a bit of an enigma of a player.
which seems to be I think enigma of a player is good if you play for Motherwell or Aberdeen or United. Um, enigma player is not really what you want when you're playing for Rangers and you're in
Yeah.
you're trying to win the title and you're trying to sweep aside St Mirren, who are not good at the minute. I've I think they're in a bit of a spiral. I mean, they lost 4-0 last weekend to a terrible Heart side. Let's be honest, like, you know, to lose 4-0 to that Heart side, you're doing something wrong. Um,
He got a new contract after that as well, Stephen Robinson.
it's the curse. It's the curse of a new contract. I mean,
Oh, it is.
you saw it with Naismith. You've seen it with
Seen it Mullow as well.
you've seen it at Motherwell. You've seen it with Rangers. It's as soon as a manager gets a new contract, David Gray as well when he was made permanent manager. Um, you as soon as a manager gets an extension, they go into a just terrible run of form, and sometimes it's fatal. And I think we'll get onto Hips later, and probably is in that case, but it, it's for Rangers to struggle to win 2-1 at home to a pretty poor St Mirren side. Something's going wrong, and you think every time you think there's a kind of uh, they're coming to they're going to turn the corner. It's a false dawn. I mean, you're 4-0 against Stille last week in Europe, and you thought, oh, okay. Despite Butland's head loss, it was a pretty good performance, and okay, maybe that's them clicking into gear now. And then again, it's like, oh, they go 1-0 up. Oh yeah, look, okay, they've got their crap together. And it's like, nope, equalised, struggled to get back in front, and if Olasanya decided to actually be on side for once, it would have probably been 2-all. But it's one of these things that Rangers are going to have to really, really figure out, because it's if they lose to Aberdeen, take away the League Cup for a second, but if they lose to Aberdeen, then the gap in the league table just gets bigger, and they could easily find themselves, 10 points behind Aberdeen at Christmas, maybe even more. Suddenly they're, even if they do spend money and sign players and get a new manager, they're going to be it's going to be too much. It's going to be too much for them to call it back.
You're absolutely spot on, Alex. To be honest, I seen a quote a couple of years. I can't remember who it was that said it. I've seen it. We were discussing it. I was still at college, and it was that it takes a minimum of 2 years for a manager to fully build his side. Because if you come into a job, so say if we take Clement, he took over a team. He got asked to do the job. He has to make do with what he's got for that first season, or like half a season again, depending when you get brought in, right? And from there, you're then having to think to yourself, right, who's still in contract that I want to keep? Okay, who's still in contract that I need shot of? And what the point, who's out of contract I want to sign, and who's in contract that I also want to sign. And those things can take time, because you can sign what seems like a great player on paper, and to us, Hearts has kind of run into this a little bit. Maybe not so much past couple of games, but definitely towards the start of the season, up until obviously the manager change, where you can sign a lot of great players, but not create a great team. And it seems to kind of be that way for Rangers now. They've got good players, they just don't have a good team, because there's too many individuals making up that team instead of it being a group of people. If you get where I'm coming from,
It is common for a manager to plan ahead a couple of years. Even
yeah.
Guinness did that quite often when he was in the Batardi dugout. So, yeah, I feel like that's a problem in modern football these days. Managers don't
There's
get
no
time.
patience.
Like to use an English example, Arsenal. Like there was times where that looked horrific for Arteta, and now they're flying. Well, kind of. But yeah, like when you were saying like Rangers and domestically, they're stuttering a little bit. It reminds me a bit of Dundee United in the Championship at some points. They were stuttering along. They were still performing, but they were stuttering.
Yeah.
If you know.
Yeah, it was that. That's a great example. I think that sort of bit after United lost to Raith Rovers the first time last season.
How was that game? That
Yeah,
was
yeah, yeah. It's reminded me exactly like that. It was that kind of middle part of the season where it just felt like it wasn't quite clicking, and eventually it did. And then, as soon as it did, able to sort of drive away and pull away and quite high points tally in the end. The the luck that Rangers are getting is that they still, it's 3 points, it's 3 points. It doesn't matter if you're at the league table, doesn't lie in the fact that it's a win. It doesn't matter if the performance was stuttering. Um, what I would worry, the big alarm bell that's running for me if I was a Rangers fan is that Butland seems to have lost a lot of confidence, and I think he's actually been the best signing they've made in the last couple of seasons, which is probably not a good sign that the best signing for a team like Rangers is your goalkeeper, but um, obviously he had that complete mistake that he got away with against Dowie, but even he still just looks a bit. It looks like he's lost a lot of confidence. I know maybe that's just the atmosphere around the club generally. Maybe that's for what it is. Maybe it's the fact that it feels like a defence that's chopping and changing every week in front of him, which is probably a bit more accurately. I mean, I think I think that was the lineup yesterday was the first time they played that back four in the league anyway.
Time in a while, Tavernier's been dropped as well, which was met with glee from some Rangers fans that I know.
Which I don't agree with. I always think Tavernier, especially domestically in Europe, I think he doesn't have the pace anymore to cause teams the trouble that he did a couple of years ago. But I think domestically he's probably is one of the most dangerous players, and he's the sort of player that while getting behind, he will somehow get 20 goals that are exactly the same tap in from the back post every season, which is good, good to have when you're playing. It's probably a similar side that will play a low block at Ibrox. Um, I do struggle to see where, and I think philosophies are talking about in football a bit too much, but I do really struggle to see what the philosophy is of this Rangers side. It feels like it's just a lot of square pegs and round holes, and I don't quite see what they're trying to do. It's not like, oh, you're trying to build this core group of young players that you're going to be able to sell on, or you're signing guys that are 31, like guys that proper. Like I don't see what's the value add of getting someone like Proper to come in, who is he much better than what they had before? I don't think he is. So it, it's a time where I think Rangers need to have a bit of a kind of reset. Especially they need to make sure they can keep in touch with Celtic and Aberdeen by Christmas, and that has to start with for them. They need to get at least a point at Tawdry. I think yeah, if you offer most Rangers fans, they'd probably bite your hand off for a point.
Yeah, when you compare the two old firm sides, when you can see clearly Celtic have a style. Like they have a system, they have players that fit that system, and everyone can interchange. Like Luke McCowan, for example, is seamless. You wouldn't thought that like a year ago, but he's seamless transition to that midfield, and you get a chop and changing like defense, which, as you were saying, for Butland, um, that's not gonna do good for your psyche if you don't know who you can trust. So, so yeah, like when you compare the two, Celtic clearly have an idea what they're doing, and it looks like Rangers don't, and that seems to be the online Rangers fans' biggest gripe is they don't have a style. What are we doing?
I mean, even if you look at the bench yesterday, right? I mean, you had Dessers, who, let's be honest, is a bit of a comedy figure now. uh, Dessers, Tavernier, Sterling, McCausland are the ones who came on. Sterling and McCausland came on for 5 minutes and 2 minutes each. And then the unused subs: McKinnon, Dowell, Fraser, Lovelace. It's not threatening at all, really. Whereas you look at sort of, I even think I think the subs that Aberdeen can bring on are more dangerous. I mean, at the minute, it's a squad it's not young, it's not getting better, and it seems quite thin on the ground, which is just, it feels like everything about that's wrong. I mean, I'm trying to think of taking away the years where we're in the lower leagues. I think this is probably the worst Rangers side since the Le Guin era. Um, and I can't see how. I genuinely can't see how that's going to change in the near future, unless all perfectly clicked together. And I might have said that about Hearts a couple of weeks ago, but at least with Hearts, you can kind of see, oh, well, at least they've got a talisman who will get them goals eventually and will be involved, and they've got guys like Forrest and Danda who can do it. A lot of these guys, it just looks like a lot of passengers in a team. And certainly not a team that's good enough to win a league, which is like I think that's gone now for them. And it's a weird thing to say in October, but I can't see them catching Celtic unless Celtic completely implode. They go to Dubai in January or something.
Yeah, you're saying about an aging squad as well. Like you see in Europe and domestically with like as well with Aberdeen somewhat. Like they, who can they sell in that team to recoup money? No one really. Like nothing's good. They need to do something over there to catch up with even Aberdeen, which a year ago would have sounded absolutely stupid. So they need to do something and quick.
I mean, I'm like I said at the start, top of the show. I'm still really annoyed United didn't really go at Rangers at Tannadice a few weeks ago. I mean, because United can be within a point of Rangers on Wednesday night. Now, probably more likely to be seven behind, but that's a different discussion. But the fact that you're, I can even say that with be semi serious when I say that. It says a lot about how poor this side is. It's really like, and it's okay. They haven't had fun with injuries, but I'm just looking at the guys that like. I think the European game summed up the Champions League game against Dynamo Kiev at Hamden. Kind of summed it up. That was a terrible Dynamo Kiev side. They are absolutely atrocious. I think they got battered in the following game, the next round, and Rangers couldn't really lay a glove on them properly at home. I mean, it took a 95th minute equaliser in Poland to even take the level back to Hamden, and they were awful in that game. And you're seeing that, and I think that actually encapsulates their entire season so far. Now, like I say, you fast forward a week, they could have beat Aberdeen, they could be in a cup final, and then it's all back to being rosy, and then they've got a European game on next midweek. But it does feel like that's quite unlikely that they're going to win the next two games. Which saying that about any old firms side doesn't really feel right. But you know, time will tell, and then they need something. Either needs to change, either at the board level. Well, at the board level, realistically, is the only thing that's going to change it. So there's no point just sacking a manager, getting another manager in, and then being in the same place in 6 months' time, which is where it will be. It's just the whole. I think there's that. It's the Celtic meme going about the cycle of things at Rangers.
Yeah, I've
It's,
seen that.
it's absolutely true.
But definitely, it's quite a weird one with Rangers at the moment. It's almost as if they're like a lower scale Man United at times. It feels like there's like all these issues in the background. Like I've kind of said it before on here. Like it's just again, pardon the pun. You just kind of want to shut it down, and start all over again. But well, I suppose they already did do that a couple of years back. But jokes aside,
They'll be
like
playing Man United soon,
hard.
won't they?
Yeah, then that's going to be like that's
That's
going to be like
gonna
the
get
Edinburgh Derby.
that's gonna get football stopped.
Yeah,
Yeah, that game is gonna be absolute torture.
I,
Well,
I
maybe. Well, not, it might have a. It looks like Anarin might be in for Man United, so they could be revitalized under that. But yeah, that game's gonna be turgid.
I think it's going to kind of be up there with when they play Spurs as well. Is it them that play Spurs or is it Celtic?
no,
They play Spurs and Man
Them,
United.
yeah.
Yeah,
And if I'm just on a job, that should also be a fun one for the Rangers fans, depending on how the results goes. It might just be like further salt in the wound if Ange Postecoglou Tottenham side ends up beating them. I think that might just cause a new shark throwing incident to happen, but at Ibrox instead of at Parkhead.
I think I was going to say I actually think the way Ange Ange sets his teams up, and I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves because I don't think they play till January or late December, um, but the way he sets his teams up, that's going to be a cricket score. Honestly, I mean, it, they could not have picked a worse team to play in all of Europe, in the style and you know the style that Spurs play. Even a misfiring Spurs, I think, will still wipe the floor with Rangers. Just you can it'll be sort of men against boys. It'll be like that Villa Hibs game from a couple of years ago.
I mean, even teams like St. Mirren were causing Rangers problems. Like, St. Mirren for the first 10, 15 minutes of that game were really, really good. That was the St. Mirren of old, a little bit. So, yeah, like, that's going to be very entertaining for me, to put politely. So,
And this, I almost feel kind of sad for the Rangers fans just because
No,
I'm
absolutely not.
no,
Absolutely.
better people. No, but no, I get what you mean though. Like it's funny just because as like obviously fans of teams that are often overlooked, it's kind of enjoyable to watch the turmoil. But at the same time, though, like knowing quite a lot of Rangers fans that have so much love and passion for their club, it's not nice when you see your club go down that path. I think we've all seen it with our own ones at least once or twice. Like sitting there asking yourself, like, what's the point in even like going to this game anymore? Like I've been told there's apparently quite a lot of spares for the semi final in the Rangers end, which is almost unheard of for a semi final for
And they're
them.
demanding a 50-50 ticket split. That's shocking. Honestly,
yeah.
I can't even believe. If they can't sell their tickets, then they shouldn't be getting
I'm enjoying
50%.
this role. I'm enjoying the role reversal of this with Rangers. It's very fun.
There is a lot of Schadenfreude going out, and
Yeah.
I think it's worth enjoying whilst it lasts. Um,
I forgot how
um,
good a phrase that was, Schadenfreude.
but it's it's one of these things. I think when the Old Firm, when either of them do badly, it's incredibly funny for the rest of us. And it's also good for the coefficient because they're still doing all right in Europe. So it's the best of both worlds. They're doing all right in Europe, so our coefficient's still doing quite well, but
It's
they're doing
always
terrible
weird. It's
domestically, which
always
is
weird
just
when they're in.
perfect.
It's
Allowed
always
them
weird
all
when they're in
around
Europe.
Europe, just absolutely no results allowed domestically, just all losses. Doesn't
Oh,
matter.
they can win
have
the Europa League for
lives.
all I care. Well, no, maybe not win. Maybe get the final because then if they win, then the Champions League following year. But then get to the final Europa League for all I care and do absolutely fantastic. So they can keep the coefficient up, but they can finish like 8th domestically. That would be perfect. Same with Celtic as well. If it was reversed before people say I'm a Celtic or prefer Celtic or prefer Rangers. It's you know it's you can't kind of help but laugh. I mean, you've seen it with it's the same with Hearts and Hibs at the minute. It's which I'm finding incredibly funny for other reasons. But it's just one of these things where you kind of got to enjoy it, and I think it's one of these. It's one of those seasons where everything that can go wrong is going wrong. Everything from the stadium being closed for 4 match days, all the way through to I'm expecting like some sort of comedy incident to happen, like a bus breaking down or something on the way to
It was a bit.
Tawdry.
It's a bit of a circus. It was a circus. There's not many like phrases that can describe it, but yeah, I can't wait for all this to bite me in the arse. All the stuff I've been saying, but
Oh,
like,
this is definitely going to get clapped and shared
Oh,
to
absolutely.
Twitter. We're
yeah,
all going to get slandered for it, but
I would
cross
deserve
that
it.
bridge
I
when we
deserve
get
it.
to it. But if that happens, we can always rebrand and come back as maybe some sort of other joking, fun player of the match trophy celebration. It might not be Salmon's Pizzeria, or maybe it may become the Salmon's Pizzeria. You never know. But petty jokes at that aside, we did mention there Hearts and Hibs now. Just what do you think that means then? The first Edinburgh derby finishes one each. It's meant to be the second biggest, potentially, depending on your persuasion, rivalry in Scottish football. Is it? Let's just put it's a simple question. Is it?
Well, I mean, there are two clubs that play in a city. I mean, so it is a big rivalry. I don't think
It's
anyone's going to begrudge that.
huge game. As a man who
Yeah.
lives in Edinburgh, you can see like the city gets like it buzzes when Edinburgh Derby Day happens.
If
So
only the players had that same buzz about them, because that was. It wasn't exactly the best advert for the game, was it?
An Edinburgh Derby being a bad game of football, I'm
yeah,
absolutely shocked.
when
It's,
was the
it,
last entertaining one?
there was a 2-2 a while back that was quite good, I think.
I'll give you that one.
I can't even remember when that was. There was. Do you know what it was? I think it's the ones that are in
Duncan
the ones that are in the league are always quite terrible, but when they get Edinburgh Derbies in the cups, there tends to be quite good.
That's
Um,
the full
There's a
reason
lot
why I
more
was
bites in
in
the
the cup.
cups.
it's usually like a cup quarter final or a fifth round game in the Scottish Cup. That's a very like that's a very Edinburgh derby game. I
You
don't
would
know
have
how to
thought this
explain it.
one would have been a bit like a cup final for both teams because if
There's a
Hibs
lot
won
of
that,
relief for
that was a
both.
momentum like change because everything was going downward spiral for them.
Their collapse last weekend was one of the most spectacular things I've ever seen. Um,
There was a
uh,
very Hibs stat that I saw when I was watching it on Sky Sports, and it was after the 76th minute, Hibs scored no goals, but they've conceded now 8 after the 76th minute.
That is so oddly specific.
I know it just stuck in my head because I was like, surely not. But then, yeah, I feel bad for Hibs at this point. I feel honestly, like bad. I feel quite bad for them, but not. But yeah, it's
you
just
you
such a
can
hit stat.
you can basically take everything we said about Rangers and just apply it to Hibs on a smaller scale. I
Oh,
mean,
definitely.
it's like they spent money, like a lot of money for a side um, that aren't Rangers or Celtic. I mean, I think they spent probably just as much as Aberdeen in the summer, maybe even a bit more. They've had this investment, which is a once in a sort of lifetime thing for a Scottish club to have. Again, outside the old firm, where you can really look to the future, and it just seems to be that every single thing that's going on is a circus. It's like you know obviously Kieran Bowie being injured, that was a big blow. Obviously, you spend whatever it was, 600 grand they spent on him. That's a massive amount. But the Luke McCowan saga in the summer was silly. They were never going to be able to sign him. He was clearly going to go to Celtic the whole summer, and Hibs just kept on bidding the same amount 3 times and expecting something to change. Um, and they've signed the comedy goalkeeper, which is, as I found out a couple of years ago, as soon as you do that, you are going to get relegated in this league. And the more I watch Hibs, the more I'm thinking, yes, it's a lot like Dundee United 22-23. It's just every single thing, players collapsing in on themselves, late equalisers or late winners that they're conceding, and then you think this was a brilliant opportunity to turn that around the derby where all form goes out the window. They're 1-0 up in the final 5 minutes of the game, and they lose a goal to a 17-year-old. And I just I'm very looking forward to Sunday. I'm looking forward to Wednesday night against Motherwell because I hope we can beat them, and then I'm going to very much
That
enjoy
is
Sunday Easter Road, because they just seem like so so permeable at the back. Permeable at the back. Is that a word? Permeable? I think it is. Um, it, everything just seems to go through them. There's no fight. There's just I hate that word fight, but they look like they're going to concede every single
Not a
time
lot of
somebody goes at them.
Yeah, there's not a lot of grit in that team. That midfield too doesn't. I know Kwan has high expectations at Celtic, and Triantis. Obviously, they know about Triantis. He was on loan at Hibs last season, but you see that forward line, especially with Gale, Hoylett, Boyle, and Yuan. That's quite good. They should be performing better with some of the players they have. It's just they aren't. Even Hearts had most of the ball, but weren't doing much. Hibs were creating chances, especially with Hoylett. Hoylett's ball delivery is, as I know from the semi-final, brilliant. He can play. They have players who can't play. It's just not happening. It's just very Hibs. But yeah, it's just there's no sunshine on Leaf at the moment.
But again, though, it's a 34-year-old and a 35-year-old you're talking about in Hoylett and Gale.
Yeah, I know, but
It's,
still,
it's, it's a bit
still a
like
decent enough front line. But
it's decent enough, but it's a bit
yeah,
like it's like I'm harking back to United's relegation season because it's bringing up so much like PTSD. But
yeah.
it's like, oh yeah, it was like,
You'll not get any jobs from me. Don't
but
worry.
it's like Stephen Fletcher. Oh, Stephen Fletcher would be great. Oh, Glenn Middleton will be great. And but they weren't. Jimmy McGrath will be great. And then all of a sudden, Jimmy McGrath is great, but just not at Aberdeen, not United. And it's the sort of same thing again. It's just the same. Whereas the expectation that these players should be good enough, and they're not. I mean, Miller in particular is one that I've picked out, and I think he was quite good on Sunday, but um, he just seems like someone who whilst has the physical attributes to play in this league, just does not have the quality. And and even like Satriantis and Quan, they just look so soft. Like
Yeah,
you said, there's no crack. I mean, those are two guys that like neither of them are hard battling midfielders. That's not a style of player they are. But
they're not frail men. Like they have their
yeah,
size.
exactly.
They're sizable.
They look like under 18 players that have been chucked in at times, which is not what you should be expecting from a Quan who Celtic spent a lot of money on, and Triantis who is a good player. I mean, always a good player. And you just I'm sure we'll touch upon Hearts in a sec, but I just I can't see where they're going as a side. Yeah, and it's not just a sack David Gray thing. Again, it's something that's going on at the club level. I mean, when Bill Foley comes out and says that he thinks things aren't being done in the right way, it's given very strong Jim Ratcliffe sort of vibes to that. Um, and and he knows how to run football clubs. Obviously, as other football clubs seem to have done quite well. Bournemouth seem to do quite well. Um, it just seems to be everything in the footballing department at Hibs is a complete shambles. I mean, you could maybe say Malcolm Mackay isn't as good at his job as some people may suspect he is, which I know that's a controversial statement to say, given all of his mates in the football industry, but um, I think it's maybe been proven that he isn't actually that good.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with that. Yeah, like there's some like I agree with you about Miller. I've not seen like he was all right on Sunday. I'll give you that, but I've not seen Miller have a good game for Hibs. I've seen Hibs a couple of times because of uni stuff, but I just there needs like they can't sack David Gray. Like I know that's probably what you should do, but they can't. There's no stability. It's a bit Aberdeenish. So sorry to give it back to Aberdeen again. I'll quickly go over this, but like there's a lot of similarities before Talene came in. It's just chaos, utter chaos until somehow we found this gem. But it's just there's a lot of similarity, like you're saying about Dundee United, and yeah, this if they don't pick up quick, it could be dangerous.
I mean, how many managers have Hibs gone through in the last like decade? I mean, even longer. I mean, you're literally going back to like John Collins for like some actual level of stability for more than a couple of seasons, and
They even
you
sacked
can't.
the manager who got them to the Scottish Cup final.
You, I mean, I just it's beggars belief. What's what, and the strategy is you're going to sack a club legend, and
That's
again,
what it was.
it's it, I always have issues with having club legends as manager. I think it almost always goes badly, but it, it's just it feels like we're just going to be in the same cycle. It's like Rangers. It's going to be the same thing again in about 12 months or 18 months time, where it'll be Ian Murray has became manager. Let's just say for like someone like that, probably not
That's
Ian Murray, but
semi-realistic, yeah.
someone like that's became manager. Same things happen. They spent a lot of money, they've bought players who probably aren't good enough, and they don't have any real philosophies aside. And then they also sell their two or three young promising players. So someone like Malintikov goes to Serie A for like 3 million. By that point, not that I'm saying he would now. I don't think he's quite at that level, but it's just that and it's just the same boom and bust cycle of they'll have 4 months where they're all right and look like they can qualify for Europe, and maybe they will, and then all of a sudden it just comes crashing back to earth, and they're in a relegation fight again, or they're in the bottom six. Which for a side like Hibs, Hibs should be finishing fifth in this league. They've got fifth biggest budget, arguably the fourth biggest budget. Probably have more. They can spend more on players than Hearts can in terms of actual transfer fees, and yet they're sitting bottom of the table, and you're looking at the league and you're like, you know, they've got Ross County in midweek, and you're thinking, if they can't beat Ross County, who can they actually beat in this division?
Yeah.
And you're struggling to come up with an answer.
I was thinking with the exact same thing. Like it's no easy game for them in this league. Like even teams that are semi underperforming have started to find their feet a tiny bit again. So I think if yeah, Hibs are in deep trouble.
They always say it's Hearts are falling apart again, but I think at this point it's just Edinburgh's falling apart. Never mind Hearts or him, it's just the both of them. Although, to be fair, I suppose they have done not too bad since the new managers came in, but it's a bit hard to tell how that will play out. You get that kind of bounce the first couple of games, and then next thing you know, 4 months later, it's like, he should never have been appointed, sack him, sack the board. So we'll probably see how that turns out for Hearts, as well as Hibs, obviously,
It's more
being the
valuable for
dilute Edinburgh Rangers now. Usually it's Hearts that gets branded that, but you're spot on. But like everything that's been said, it's bad days for the two Edinburgh sides. But again, from the outside looking in, it must be even worse if you're a fan of either team.
I think that point for Hearts was more valuable, but for them because
Yeah, definitely.
Hibs had the better chances and then let a 17-year-old score his second goal in 2 games, I think. Seems to be a weird theme because Aberdeen, Fletcher Boyd, the 16-year-old, that
Did the
happened to
same
them
thing.
last season. It's a weird trend. They just let children score against them. But I would say, I think Hearts are going to improve. I think it's inevitable they're going to go up the table again. That they have too many good players in that team to be where they are. It's a false position, in my opinion. But yeah, like I'd say things are rosier in Gorky than they are in Leaf right now.
Yeah, I'd agree. I was at the European game last week against Omeona Nicosia, and that they were terrible. The Cypriot side. I was very shocked at how bad they were. I expected like all the things I'd heard about them. I thought they'd be quite good. They'd have like usually these teams in Europe they have one like
They brought
unreal
a very big
Brazilian player or
support as
something.
well. Yeah, they brought a very. I was stuck in traffic for 15 minutes because of them. Just yeah, it was just yeah. I didn't watch the game, but all I heard on saw my from my mates in the timeline was just Hearts are back, Hearts are back, Hearts are back. I was like, just calm down. It was just but yeah.
They brought a big sport. They were very well supported, especially for a Cypriot side who you think probably wouldn't bring that much. But you see Hearts obviously 4-0 against St Mirren, an away draw in the derby, having came back from behind. That does feel like a catalyst for some change or potential change. I mean, it's always hard to say if you're um, like in the Premiership. It does feel very topsy turvy this season, but they've got Kelly at home on Wednesday night, who, although they beat Rangers, were pretty awful.
Yeah. I
Up in
wonder which one
Dingwall.
we sent off this week.
Yeah, it's red card bingo. But you do think if they win that, then suddenly there's a bit of momentum going, and now suddenly they can look up the table, and there's a good chance, depending on results, they could be as high as eighth on Wednesday on Wednesday night, and suddenly that doesn't look anywhere near as bad as what you're saying. Like now, being third's probably unachievable for Hearts this season, just unless Aberdeen or Rangers completely blow up.
Unless
Um,
Aberdeen do a Hearts when we finish third. Yeah.
yeah, but realistically, fourth for Hearts isn't a disaster from where the start was, and still Europa League is, albeit it's qualifying rounds, and given that they are playing European football, and that has gone perfectly so far, and they are like they're qualified for the next round. I know they've got 4 games to play. They're not losing to Petro Cub. They are absolutely dreadful, and they're the worst team probably to play in this tournament ever. So, like, given that they've got to play them at Tynecastle and probably win about 8 now, that's they'll be playing in Europe after Christmas. So all of a sudden, you win these couple of games, you're mid-table, not best start, not the worst start. You're in Europe till probably February. It's actually looking like quite a rosy season, all things considered. So it does feel, and you've got guys like Wilson coming through who are, that's the future, and that's probably something Hearts have struggled with in recent times, is bringing through these youth players or making sure these youth players can actually get game time in the squad, because it does feel like, you go back, guys like Harry Cochrane were being talked about, is this sort of great next big thing, and then all of a sudden suddenly wasn't. um, it does feel like for Hearts they are now in a position where you can go, okay, maybe this isn't going to be terrible. I mean, it just feels like they haven't quite clicked into place in a lot of games, and maybe they are actually starting to click. And maybe I will be made to look like a complete idiot about Neil Critchley because I thought it was going to be a bit of a disaster when he took over. It was a bit like, ex Blackpool manager, really? Surely you can do better with that with your analytics account and football manager stats.
Yeah. Yeah, so also from their the European statos, like 95% chance to go through in the Conference League. Sure, yeah, but like there's still the Scottish Cup. That's still all to play for. Um, as you said, there's win games in the Conference League where the Hearts should win. So
Yeah,
that
yeah, no, they'll beat Petro Cup. That Moldovan side they literally playing a West of Scotland league ground. There's they won't lose that. I think they've got a better chance of finishing the top eight than anything else at the minute because Copenhagen are terrible.
yeah, I remember Copenhagen are in a good spot as well. So this could be a Europe could be a catalyst for them to improve domestically. And I feel like with Critchley, it's a proper coach. Like with Naismith, it was a bit of an experiment. And even with when I was saying about Hearts being in a false position, before the sending off in the Aberdeen Hearts game, Hearts were on top. Like
Hmm.
Hearts were the better team for quite a bit of that game. Until but yeah, like you can tell they're not mugs. Like there's players. Like obviously Shanklin's not scoring, but one everyone knows, one goal live in you're back. So yeah, um, yeah,
I mean,
Hearts are.
they got Danda, who's, let's be honest, probably the best player outside the big three, outside the top three all season
Yeah.
last year. And
Like a
everyone,
player Spittle as well. I think he's been quite decent for them as well.
yeah, well, I thought he was very good in the European game, and it's obviously we usually talk about Europe as a detriment to domestic football, but I think maybe in Hearts' case, albeit after probably three of the three very dreadful performances against Victoria Pills and then against Dinamo Minsk. I know they won the Minsk game, but again, Minsk were poor opposition. Um, they do now look like a side and go, oh, well, maybe, they've got a chance here. Oh, well, suddenly this clicks into gear. And it wasn't like they've not been really battered domestically too much. I think it's more been sort of like the odd game hasn't gone their way or it's been a missed chance. But I mean, ever since they got that late equaliser away at Ross County, it does, sorry, home to Ross County, it does feel like something's just clicked into place a little bit, and maybe right, okay, these are the things that are going to come from it. And Hearts always start the season badly. They were pretty poor at the start of last season as well. It wasn't as bad as this, but they were poor. And we talk about League Cup defeat as well to Falkirk. They can't play in the League Cup. That's a competition. They've got a Dundee or a Dundee or a Hibs esque record. In like they just don't. I think I think last time they won it was like the 60s. I think they won it once in the 60s. I think East Fife have won it more times than Hearts, which says a lot.
So, kind of taking things a wee bit further then, gents, then, we've kind of spoke about things that, sorry, like, pure Kirsten died a wee bit there for a second and lost the Wi-Fi signal, but just kind of flowing then off the Hibs and the Hearts game, the County Kelly one, did you catch any of that at all? Because I followed that one exclusively just on live scores, to be honest, and that certainly seemed as though it just kind of went from one extent to another.
If ever there was a game defined by a red card, it was, I I actually started I was thinking McInnes was coming under a little bit of pressure before the Rangers win. I think the Rangers win, obviously, when you beat the Old Firm, that alleviates that massively. But, they've now they've been knocked out Europe, they've done all that, they've out the League Cup, and then Saturday comes along, you think they go 1-0 up, you think, right, okay, this is a good game. But it's just the ill discipline yet again. Another silly red card. I mean, every time you watch them, I mean, it's a dream if you're a betting person, if you're a betting man. You're going to be making money on that every week, because it just feels like it's bingo on who's going to get sent off.
It's almost
It's
inevitable
just
that something's going to happen. Yeah, like I think that's their fifth or sixth of the season already.
yeah, it's insane. It's insane. I mean, if it was
And
like
it's
in Europe,
October,
you'd be getting
nearly
fined for
November.
having. It's mad, and Ross County are a team that don't know how to that don't give up. I
Yeah,
think they probably have. I'd argue say they've probably got the worst squad in the league, but there's certainly plenty of determination in them. I'm still unsure about Duncowie manager, but I think he's better than Malcolm Mackay, but I don't think that's a very uh, high bar to clear. Um,
they have definitely good individuals in that county squad. But I liken Hale. I'm liking Hale, and also Akil Wright. Like those are very good signings. But I think they're a team that plays together. If you know what I mean, they're not a team of individual. They're not individuals. They work together. And yeah, I thought County was going to be a very tough season, but they could go up. But it's you don't know who's really going to go down this season. It's a bit. I thought St. Johnstone were going to go down, but they could stay up. It's just don't really know what's going to happen. So
yeah, and it's not like you have there's no Hamilton or Livy in the league that are
yeah,
the sort of default candidates, or a side that are going through massive amounts of turmoil, like a club administration or something. So, County are probably the favourites to go down just on paper in terms of budget and whatnot. But, Ronan Hale, I think you should say, really good signing. Also, John White that continues to step up with another goal. Another really, really important goal. Right off the free kick. I think it was right off the free kick from the red card as well. Um, and you just think with the way that someone, and I hate the phrase "it's a hard place to go," but quite literally it's a hard place to get to. Dingwall, and they've got a great record there. And I was up there for the second game of the season. United were away to Ross County, and it was a game where Ross County were brilliant in the first half. They should have been 2 up. Um, and United somehow went 1-0 up, and I thought United would take all 3 points, go back down the road. But 98th minute equaliser because they were fighting to the bitter end, and a game that looked like it slipped away from them. They stayed in it and managed to get the chance and take the goal and get a deserved point probably over the piece. And the more I see a county, the more I'm thinking, oh well, maybe they can even they sneak up in the top six. Maybe they can do this. Maybe they can do that. Just because
yeah.
there
Just
is
depends
that.
on the day, really.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's just when I was up in Dingwall for the Aberdeen game, it's like 98th minute. That says a lot about County as a team. Like it took that long for Aberdeen to break them down eventually, and yeah, I think like defensively, like they've made shrewd signings. They've made thing is with County, they seem to find a way to find some sort of player out of nowhere. A bit like Livingston the last couple of years, they always seem to find somebody
like
to lead.
Reagan Charles Cook or Hungbo, if you go back a couple of
Yeah,
years ago. It's just this
those were
kind of
they were brilliant. Yeah,
yeah. And
so
Hale seems the latest of this sort of signing, and it isn't like. And to be fair, they aren't. It's like an either English lower league reject or a League of Ireland or Irish league player, and
yeah,
you're kind of like, well, like why at Ross County? It's a bit of an odd signing, and suddenly they're really good. And I think I think Wright, who deservedly gets plaudits as well. I think he's really important, and they just look quite a solid outfit, which is I think important, and I think being a solid, well worked squad can do quite a lot of good in the Premiership, and for a side like County, the longer you're away from the bottom spots in the league, the better. Um, but I believe you're not in this. They're in seventh at the minute. They're 4 clear of Hearts and Hibs, which is probably would have got decent odds on at the start of the season. And they seem to okay, yeah, they'll pick up, they'll lose games, but even when they play the Old Firm up at Global Energy Stadium, which I still hate saying,
yeah.
um,
So still,
yeah, Victoria
but,
Park, yeah. Although I think there's about 1 million Victoria Parks in
yeah,
Scotland, they
Oh yeah,
They
Victoria.
give the Old Firm good game, and you know they always seem to be. It seems to be where actually more league titles seem to be decided just by proxy of Rangers dropping 2 points or Celtic dropping or losing at County or whatever it is that happens. Um, and I think that's testament to how to the belief that the players have and the fact that they do know that it is, you know, it is their home record that's going to keep them up. And I think you've got to say you've got to pay credit to that. I mean, you know, I think I look at the league table before it came on. I think they were fourth in the home table so far. I think it's 8 points from 6 home games, which doesn't sound as impressive as it should do, but it was. It's I think it's important to have if you know especially when you've had Celtic and Aberdeen at home so far, and you know you've lost both those games by what, a single goal. Um, Especially Aberdeen, which is effectively a home game for Aberdeen because of the support that's taken up in Celtic somewhere. So it's there's a lot of credit to be paid at Duncowie at the minute, which is something again I didn't necessarily think I'd be saying.
Yeah, I don't think anyone really was thinking that County were going to perform as decent as they have, and hopefully for Aberdeen away day's sake, I hope they stay up.
But I still think I, I, I think the Mallard is a national institution.
Yeah,
I think it should be put in some sort of listed status
yeah.
if possible.
It's an absolutely brilliant place, and like for me, family wise, like me and my three brothers, like every single time Dingle away is happening, we're there every single time. Like Airbnb in Inverness, we just make a day of it. It's great, and personally, if that happens, I would be if they get relegated, I'd be devastated. So, but yeah, it's just yeah, I've enjoyed seeing Ross County play, and I hope it stays like that for them. But in this league, we've kind of seen everything is unpredictable.
St Johnstone are in the top half. St Johnstone are in the top half of the league. How has this happened?
Yeah, yeah.
Who's allowed this to happen?
Attacking Craig Levine looked like a bit of a masterstroke, but
Um,
yeah,
but yeah, I mean, even looking at Kelly, I think they're the one going from the positive to the negative. Um, I, the obviously disciplinary record's a huge issue. I think the patience where McInnes's recruitment style, or certainly his recruitment um, pool, is starting to tire. I think it's in fact it's the same every season. You know what's going to happen. It's going to be a player who has either played in Scotland before or has played in English League One is your signings, and you know there's a law of diminishing returns on that, especially when all of the English
McInnes
lower leagues
teams
is
we
doing the
had
exact same
were
thing.
yeah the McInnes teams we had were basically what we can get out of the British Isles and Ireland. And yeah, it's also a lot of that Kilmarnock team used to play for Aberdeen as
Yeah,
well.
it's
Marley Watkins, Gary Mackay Stephen, like there's Matty Kennedy, who I'm actually quite annoyed that we let go because I think Matty Kennedy's a so. But yeah, it's just I think it was there was like I don't think it I think I'm not that surprised Kilmarnock that's happened to Kilmarnock, but it still is because like you can see against Rangers, they can still put in good performances. There's still like that tactical ethos that McInnes has. It does work sometimes, like, but yeah, they have also still have players who can Watkins on his day, Armstrong. Like they still have good individuals who can provide a spark, and McInnes does like relying on individuals to provide that little bit of spark. So,
I
but
mean, I was calling for Danny Armstrong to be in the squad for the Euros, so that kind of
yeah,
says
I
a
think
lot.
I said a similar thing on a other podcast. Yeah,
I was advocating for him because I thought again I thought he was absolutely sensational last season, and I think he probably could have arguably if it wasn't for Shankland he probably would have had a good shout at being Player of the Year. But he's kind of gone off form this year, or probably more accurately teams have worked out how to play against him. Um, which happens in Scotland when you play each other 4 times. That just tends to happen. As a byproduct is that teams know the players playing against more. So you've seen it with other big players and other star players in other teams. But I I just think it's this kind of European curse when you qualify for Europe. There's always this like thing
yeah,
in the back of your head where it feels like you're in a relegation battle following season, and Hearts are clicking into gear, or it looks like they're clicking into gear, and you're thinking, right, Hibs will probably be the same soon, and then it's St Mirren and Kelly that are sitting at the bottom of the league. It's not great. 9 points from 9 games, and most seasons would probably have you in 11th. I think as this season's just been quite weird all round, that's kind of left in a bit of a false position. Obviously, everything can change um, if they change for midweek. That's the beauty of having these run of fixtures the way they are. But I think there's a lot of question marks to be asked at this Killie team, and particularly of the discipline. Um, they can't just keep getting players sent off. It's they're throwing away points. It feels like they've probably thrown away 9 points this season by having players sent off still for absolute mad reasons. I mean, they lost 3-0 at home to St Johnstone, didn't they? Yeah, they lost 3-0 at home to St Johnstone, which is, again, completely bizarre. It's a result that should not be happening for Kelly. And they have the advantage of having the plastic pitch at home, which is an advantage that no one else has. So has which does pay dividends for them more often than not. And you think, even with that advantage, and even with everything, and even with all the good feeling from season previous, uh, they look in trouble. They look really in trouble, and it's worrying. I would say, if I was a Kelly fan, it's quite worrying.
That bottom half, for a lot of those teams in the bottom half will be thinking they're in a false position. Like Dundee and Kilmarnock and St Mirren they've got, well, apart from Dundee, sorry, St Mirren and Kilmarnock, they've had that taste of Europe and they want it again, and they'll be thinking to themselves, we can be that team again. So if I think it's going to be very, very intriguing and interesting to see who stays in that bottom six, because could a lot of those teams from fifth to 12, like, it could be anyone who be in that bottom half.
Well, I'm just glad it's not United for once. Having said that,
There's a long,
I,
there's
I,
a long way to go.
it's a long way to go. I mean,
Aberdeen could capitulate as well. I'm still waiting for us to lose at some point.
what I was going to say, I think 25 points, you're getting closer to the. I think 35 is usually enough to keep you up. So I think when you get to 35, that's when you can start to relax and play a bit more free flowing football. Well, moving on from probably one car crash to another, and St Johnstone's defending for the first goal against Dundee.
Oh, that was very funny. I'm sorry, but it was very funny. Like, I'm trying to be as unbiased. I'm not. I've been very biased this podcast. So I apologize for that.
I,
But
but it's different. I love it as a host watching it because the passion comes through. So hit me with all your biases.
okay, yeah, I didn't know what this was about, so I'm glad.
Says the man wearing an Aberdeen top. I
Yeah, no,
didn't want this to be biased.
If I
yeah,
can,
no,
let me
I had to let
be
the
sitting on a willow strip. So
but yeah, but yeah, yeah, just Simon Murray doing what Simon Murray does. He's being a pest.
Yeah.
Like, I mean that as a compliment. I like a striker who's our pest. So just like, and also I was intriguing that Dundee dropped John McCracken, which was which I kind of agree with, because I don't know why I've never seen McCracken have a good game when I've watched him. So, but yeah.
I've been quite surprised why. You I didn't think Carson had a good game either, but he got an assist, which was the main thing for him, which is very weird to see the goalkeeper get an assist. But the the defending for that goal is one of the funniest things I've seen in quite a while. You could play the Benny Hill music over it, and it wouldn't be out of place. I have no idea what the St Johnstone defence is doing. I have absolutely no idea. I think Sinclair gets himself in all sorts of trouble. It's very, very funny. But oh no, not him. Nicky Clark did manage to get the winner as St Johnstone came back, and Simo Valakari's side came back. And I think he's a very good appointment, a very shrewd appointment, something completely different.
Yeah,
Um,
I really
which
liked it as well.
which means PLZ Soccer have probably had a complete heads gone at that, and that Neil Lennon wasn't given the job, or Jim Duffy wasn't given the job, or someone someone of that ilk. But I think if you're St Johnstone, you're in a similar kind of boat to Ross County. Not quite as extreme. You don't have to pay sort of for the expenses of people going to live up north, but you have a very small budget. The expectation realistically is 10th. There is a kind of core group there of players. I mean, guys like Sidibe and Kampioka are very Levine signings and sort of diamonds in the rough that they found, that no one had really heard of. And when Sidibe isn't punching players in stomachs or even lower, he is a very good player. And they've got someone who I still think is one of the maddest decisions Dundee United have ever done, was to let Nicky Clark go to St Johnstone. I think he's a player that he will not. He's never been a 20-goal a season striker, but he will score 5-10 goals a season that are important, very important. And I think Saturday was a prime example of that. If that game's a draw, then okay, it's not a disaster for St Johnstone to come back from behind, but getting a win in a game where they created a lot of chances and they certainly deserved 3 points. I thought they were, I think something like 20 shots they had in the whole game, which for as any St Johnstone sides, but when they're not playing against 10 men, that's quite achievement, especially away from home at Dundee, which is a game they have struggled in quite a lot. I just, it does feel like this is, you can see Valakari's sort of philosophy coming through. I said that word twice now and I really hate it, but you can see it. You can see that there is something that he's spotted with this squad, and achievable. I mean, you think only a few weeks ago where they got absolutely battered by Celtic, and you were just kind of like, well, what's the point of this game even taking place? Complete non-event. They're now looking like a side that can cause teams a lot of trouble, which I think is probably good, because I think St Johnstone are dogged and when they're determined, and when they do play well, they can really cause a lot of havoc. And I think this is a prime example of it. I mean, this was a game they dominated possession, they dominated the play, and Dundee once again completely collapsed on themselves. I don't. The more I see of Dundee, the less I'm impressed. Which, for it's probably been the same for the 26 years of my life, but and I find that very funny. But I just don't quite see what Dundee are trying to do. I think there's after a lot of praise, which I think was quite unfair on Tony Docherty at the start of the season, talking about how well they'd been playing, when a lot of it was League Cup against like Bonnie Rig, and you're like, right, okay, so what? They've won two games in 18 in the Premiership. It's not great form. That's relegation form, to be honest. That's certainly bottom half form. And the more the more games they throw away winning positions, the more you're thinking, right, this team's in trouble. There's no confidence. There's absolutely, and these are games at home as well. There's going to be big issues coming, I think, unless something is changed at Dundee, and especially with teams in and around them starting to pick up form.
Well, definitely, it's quite weird with Dundee. Like, I do agree. Like, I did say good things about the start of the season, because like the results were there. Obviously, they did not bad last season as well towards the tail end. It is just kind of one of those weird ones where they're Hibs in it. This is the only really way to describe it. Like, they just collapse and just seem to lose the plot halfway through a game. It's quite a weird one to watch, especially as someone is a bit of a neutral to things like this. I will say though, this is probably the biased part of me coming out now, so don't worry, Thomas, I'm in that camp with you all day long. I'm actually kind of enjoying the fact St John's starting to get their luck kind of picking up a little bit. As soon as I see anyone that's affiliated with Motherwell doing well or getting like a managerial job or become a signing somewhere else, I automatically root for them, just because I still feel like a sense of ownership over them. unless it's Louis Moult, Declan Gallagher, anything like that, and they're playing against us. Or just no. Jokes aside, though, like things like that, it's good to see him doing well. Just again from the whole kind of bias side of things, but
Yeah, what you can say about St. Johnstone, like over Dundee, is like St. Johnstone have players who are entertaining, if you know what I mean. There's Sidibe,
yeah,
there's Kim Pioka, I was totally in agreement with you about Nicky Clark. Like on his day, I think he's been one of the more underrated players who's played in recent times in the Premiership. But especially like the two free kicks, he has quality. So yeah, like you can say about St. Johnstone over Dundee, is they have players who can entertain you as a neutral. Dundee, you can't say that as much.
Well, obviously losing McCowan has been a big loss. I think you know
I would, yeah,
you
after,
can't
yeah,
gloss
oh,
over that. He's
that's
their
yeah,
best player.
he's brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah, and you can see you know he's seamlessly fit into a Celtic side, and he was you know the difference for a large spell of the game on Sunday. But you know it does feel like that. Guys like Trevor, you know, Carson I've never been particularly fond of as a goalkeeper. I think you know he put this
I
way. He
will
was
say with Cash, it's a weird one. Like when he was with us, like he had spells where he was absolutely phenomenal, then spells that made you wonder how on earth has this man became a professional footballer. It was very both sides of the spectrum. It was either he is amazing or he is diabolical. Please get him out of that number one jersey now.
I'd say you have a definite upgrade now with Oxborough.
Oh yeah, without a doubt. I mean that was a massive upgrade from Kelly. I mean Mark Gillespie, if you remember him when he was playing for Motherwell,
I
he
do
was an upgrade
remember, yes.
from Carson as well originally. Like, don't get me wrong, I've got all the respect. Well, Carson's a lovely guy. Like, as an actual individual, lovely man. And the fact, like, he's tried to set up like different like coaching academies at clubs he's been at. Like, he had one with Scott Fox when he was still at Motherwell, when him and both Fox were both injured. Like, can't fault the guy for like who he is. But just as a player, though, it's like it's boggling sometimes. Like, what I always think of is that one specific Rangers result again. I won't even mention the scoreline; it still makes me upset. You will probably know the exact what I'm talking about. It's just, it's not great. Like, just he's got it in him to be really good, but he's a very much a chalk and cheese kind of guy. He's at one extreme or the other. There's just no in between.
there's I think I can't remember if it was I think it was the first goal. I think it was the goal from Dan Casey where he's got to do better. He's just got to do better. It looks like he looks like it. I know he's slightly unsighted, but he's got to be sharper to it. And I, I just don't think he's quite got. He's played. It feels like he's played for half the Premiership. He's played at United. Played at St Mirren. Played at Motherwell. He's played at Dundee. I think was it someone else as well in that. Oh, I think. I actually just don't think he's quite at the level to play in the Premiership anymore. I think he's someone who'd probably be very good in the Championship. I think he'd be, you know, if he signed for Hamilton or if he signed for
Oh come on, that's too
Fairmont.
far.
Hamilton's probably a bit harsh. Eh?
Not
So
Yeah,
that's
I
very
was
harsh. Sorry.
quiet for Hamilton. Yeah.
Right. If he signed for say Rafe or Dunfermline,
Morton
he,
even.
no, I'd say if he signed for someone like Dunfermline, it'd be brilliant for them, and he'd be really, you know,
He would fit in on Morton. To be fair, there's a lot of oldies.
yeah, actually, yeah, Morton now,
Yeah,
yeah, he's
Yeah.
given James McDonald vibes now, isn't he? And I don't now. Okay, part of me is a bit. This is a bit laughing at our rivals, but does Dundee generally? There just seems to be a bit of a malaise that's kind of gone under them. Came over them recently, and whether or not it just means they're going to have a kind of average season where they finish ninth, or they're going to end up in a relegation battle, is still yet to be determined. And I think you know there is belief in those players, and there's plenty of fight in the team, which is a good thing. That you know I don't think it's quite as drastic as Kelly for example. As Hibs for example, but I would worry about Docherty if he because this is his first time he's really experienced this as Dundee manager or as a manager to try and right this ship Now maybe maybe it's a bad patch that all teams will go through, but I think it just feels that there's things are turning against them at the minute a lot, and yeah, it's hard to put a finger on exactly why it's happening, but the longer this run goes on, the more terminal it gets, and I think the more that pressure will come under Docherty, and I think now it does feel like this result in particular is losing the Tayside derby in inverted commas is a brilliant banner by the way from the away end. Absolutely top marks to the Fair City boys for that one. Um, it does feel like a kind of turning point, a sliding doors moment for both teams actually.
Yeah, I'm quite surprised to be honest because when I watched them play against Dundee, Dundee were quite good. Like there were a couple of moments where they could have gotten a couple of goals. Aberdeen weren't really up the traps. The second half, especially, Aberdeen didn't do anything really, just bombarding Dundee attack. So yeah, I think you're right in saying this is a little bit of a sliding down the that's about to fall down the hill a tiny bit, but yeah, it has surprised me. But I think they'll I think they'll find their feet again. But like, sometimes you'll see, like with these sort of teams, they will have a sort of patch and then they'll find their feet again. Like I don't think there's any need for alarm bells yet, but
I
time
mean,
to tell.
every
They've
team that goes through a run like that where they get like 6 or 7 really bad games in a row. Ours always happens around about Christmas time. It's like clockwork every year, and it usually kind of come out of it around about like the March, April time, and then we somehow end up scraping top six and getting into Europe like under Alexander with one or two competitive like league games the full like part of like that year from like the January to like the end of the season still somehow made Europe like you'll get teams
Similar
that
at
go
Dundee
through
United one year as well with the with Tam Courts as well. Did not win a lot of games, but
yeah
they still got into Europe.
I'm pretty sure that was the same year as well because I think that was around about the time the whole I moved to Dundee United for tweets like this. Like so this even tweet was posted by someone, but less of that one the better. He's back where he belongs. Tony Watt, but just
he,
it's a weird way that this league works. I mean, you can kind of predict it of when it's going to happen for teams like this with Dundee. Like they're a bit of what I call a yo-yo team. Same with Dundee United. Sorry, Alex, but it's almost as if they're too good for the championship but just not fully there for the Premiership. It's like the whole like are they a big fish, a small pond, or vice versa argument. It's more like they're a medium-sized fish in a fish tank, and they don't know where their pond is,
I would say with Dundee that I think they are the most relegated side in history from the top flight.
which is
Just
a
gonna just
mental
gonna put
statistic to
just gonna
hold.
put that out there. It's a bit like when you see it's like I think Sunderland is it Sunderland or Leeds that have that same stat in England. Someone weird has it in England. Um, but I mean even looking at the next two fixtures, Celtic away, so that's a write off straight away. Celtic could put 4 or 5 past them, doesn't really matter. Yeah, it depends. Or who knows? They have a, they have a record of being quite competitive at Celtic Park, but realistically, probably going to lose that one. But we are treated to probably probably the best game on the calendar next weekend. It's Dundee Killie on Sunday at
Are you
Dens.
sure? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
No, it is the best. It is the best game on the calendar. I know people like statistically it is. I think I think there's always got a last minute winner in it. It's always mad. There's always red cards. It's everything you could possibly want. The Scottish Games Dundee Killie. It's a game that Sky should be showing every single time, which means they never will show it ever. But it's
I don't show the games that matter really. So
I promise I'll be nice about them. To be fair, I say that they showed two games on Sunday and it was
yeah,
really good production. So what's a time for that having the Edinburgh Derby. So they've upped their game this season, which is good. It's been a lot better this season. But that Dundee Killie game again. It's in our I was gonna say mid table battle, sort of lower half middle, like low to mid table battle that does kind of feel like it's quite profound for both teams. I mean, the next few games for Dundee: Celtic away, Killie at home, Aberdeen away, Hibs at home. The
That is
next
quite a
four.
hard run of games.
that is a yeah.
and then Killie
Nope.
away again. So they're going to be playing Killie for the third time by the 30th of November, which feels very weird. But just by the sort of metrics of the League Cup semis and games being brought forward from sort of January time.
Yeah, and Dundee, and that's a big game for Dundee Kilmarnock because they're both 3 points above the two relegation places, so that is a big game for both of them.
It does feel like they need. Well, actually, it's felt like this season every game is a big game actually, which is good, which is what you want from Premiership, and it's been genuinely really exciting because of it. I actually can't think of a start to a season that's been as mad as this. Like except that one year where like the league got drunk and Hamilton were top. That was bizarre.
That was a hilarious weekend on Twitter that week.
That was just mad. I mean, that was insane. I won't go back to that because that was very funny. But
That was
you know,
almost like the Pokemon Go summer of like 2016. The
I
massive
think 14. I think it's 14,
immaculate vibes, just because Hamilton and I'm me, but just in terms of a lead patter, like no one. I miss the absolute bonkersness like that. I mean, Aberdeen's kind of doing it, I suppose, now. But you can almost expect Aberdeen to do well, just because again, big city team. That with Aki's, that was something else.
it's. I think it's just Dundee are a club that I feel like it's always 5 minutes from disaster. I think
Yeah,
United have been in the last sort of 10 years. United have kind of became like that as well, and Hibs especially. But Dundee are always a club that do seem, even like it's their best finish in 20 years when they finished sixth. Now for a club that's probably the seventh biggest club in Scotland, that's not great. Especially given that they spent a lot of money twice, and gone bad for them twice. But it's I just there just seems to be a lot going on at Dundee behind the scenes that just seems a bit silly. Like the new stadium that isn't going to happen. Like it's they
will
can
this
keep on.
one be affected by climate change disproportionately compared to Tannadice as well? Do you think?
Of course, famously, obviously the pitch last season was just comedy. I think that obviously they've spent a lot of money to do that up this season, but I just
Hopefully, anyway.
wow, we're getting into storm season, so let's see.
Yeah,
Let's see what we get. I think they will, obviously just the embarrassment of all that just kind of, it took a shine off what was a very good season last season was sort of things like that, the sort of farcical nature of it, and I know that I know two broadcasters were absolutely furious about it, and it's this.
It makes it
I,
feel like it's bad.
I know. I just think Dundee just need to. They need another season of stability where a sort of seventh, eighth place finish, and it's fine because it just feels like if it's one good year, one bad year, one good year, one bad year, and United have been the same to an extent in the last few years, but it does feel like I think now starting to get to a bit more of an even keel, at least I hope. And I do worry from worry / find funny, but I don't want Dundee to go down. I love the Derbies. I think they're brilliant. It feels like I've not had very many of them in my lifetime, just by nature of either United being down or Dundee being down. And I think Scottish football's all the better for Dundee Derby. I think it's the best derby in Scotland. It's fantastic. Way better than the Edinburgh variety. The and I just don't know quite what the plan is for the season. Is it going to be, are they going to buy new players, get another freak loan signing like another Owen Beck who does brilliant for them, and I just it feels like you're kind of gambling on a lot of things to go well, which isn't really a stable platform to build from. I don't think.
Oh no, definitely. Because once you start holding out for things like that happen, that's where it all goes wrong. We look at us with Mika Beref last season. Amazing loan deal. Thought it was going to be what saved our season, and then ended up injured and whisked away. And we never saw him ever again. Like you can't hold out for things like that. But again, it kind of goes back to what I said. Like Dundee, they're not a small fish in a big pond like Championship or like with like the Premiership. Again, they're a fish that doesn't know if they should be in the pond, the sea, or the lake. They're just all over the place. They need, as you were saying, like a couple of safe finishes. Doesn't need to be anything spectacular, just to help them kind of apply these orders where they need it, like pitches if they should move stadium. It is a bit of a weird one with Dundee. It must be quite frustrating because it just seems to be like every year just something different. But I suppose Alex, you'll be buzzing about this, though, to be fair.
I've got a big. It's not quite a smile. It's more a kind of smug
Right.
look in my face.
Yeah.
See,
I
for the
kind
people
of
who can't see his face, you should see the grin. It's like the Cheshire cat staring at us right now.
it's a Chris Sutton, a kind of Chris Sutton when Rangers go 1-0 down sort of smile. A kind of
Yeah.
yeah. But it's for I could go on about Dundee's silly stadium malarkey and it's something that's been going on and off for about 20 years. But I think whereas Aberdeen's is actually quite serious and earnest, I think Dundee feels a bit pie in the sky. I mean, they say pie in the sky. They at one point said they were going to build a monorail to Camperdown Park, which was just a hilarious point in football history. Um, where they end up this season, I think, isn't. It's obviously important for Dundee fans, but I think they'll know that they're not going to, realistically, they're not going to be in a European fight. It's more about just making sure they're not going to go down if they're seventh, eighth, ninth. It's just about making sure, or sixth. It's just about making sure that they are in that mid-table where it gets to April and they're not worried about going down and they can think about next season and be like, right, here's the squad we're building, here's the young guys like Finlay Robertson, they're going to get more game time. I say young, I feel like he's been there forever, but like it's important, I think, for Dundee that they can just calm down and not have another bam pot season where they somehow end up going down some. And I do think Docherty is good enough to guide them through that. I think they just need a run of games where they're not conceding stupid late goals and by some absolutely clean defending or clean goalkeeping a la Hibs.
It is quite a weird one for them, but I suppose we'll see how things go out for the rest of the season for them, and we can hear us talk about these things next week when the next episode of Sammy's Pizzeria debuts, wherever you like to find your podcast, be it YouTube, Spotify, etc., etc. Big thank you to gents. This one lasted a lot longer than planned. We're clocking at the 1:42 minute for all of my lovers
Oh
of.
my god, it's like 10:25.
It's been a long late shift here at the pizzeria, but as
A
always,
lot of
it's
uni
been
work
a
to do.
pleasure. I hope you've all enjoyed the unintentionally longer form. It wasn't planned at all, but it just goes to show. Can't get too much of a good thing, lads. Can only thank you all for your time, both the listeners as well as yourselves, taking time to discuss things. And as always, have a lovely rest of your week, guys.